We want to talk about how to set up truth tables. First thing, we kind of review that the truth table for P and Q has a property, and we've been over this in detail, the property that in order for P and Q to be true, both P and Q have to be true. So I say the rule for and is it's false if it ain't both true. Okay, it's false unless they're both true. True only if they're both true. So true, true gives you true. Everything else has at least one false in it. So they're not both true, gives us false. The rule for disjunction or is that it's true if they ain't both false. Okay, so if at least one of these is true, at least one is true, they're not both false, then it's got to be true. So the only way P or Q can be false is if both P and Q are false. And then if P, then Q. Now this goes back to if it rains, I'll give you $100. What makes that false? It rains and I don't give you $100. So it's true unless the antecedent is true and the consequent is false. Okay? Antecedent being the thing in front of the arrow, consequent being the thing after the arrow. The antecedent being the thing that's if, and the consequent being the thing, the then part. Okay? So P, if P, then Q. It's always true except when the antecedent, which in this case is P, the thing before the if, or the thing with the if, the thing before the arrow, is true, and the consequent is false, because you can't have something false concluded from something that's true. You can't conclude a false from a true. You can conclude anything from a false, either a true or a false, but you can only conclude a true from a true. You can't include a false from a true. So it's true, again, unless the antecedent is true and the consequent is false. We have to keep these three rules in mind. Also, of course, the rule that the negation of something has exactly the opposite truth value. Okay? And I make a note that this means if P, then Q. There are many other translations, but that's kind of our defining translation. Okay, now we want to evaluate P and not Q. Now, when I wrote this out, I first wrote out P and not Q over here to the right, leaving myself some space in between so that I could fill in anything I needed in order to evaluate P and not Q. Now, the thing I need in order to evaluate P and not Q, I need the value of P, which I get from here, and I need the value from not Q, which I didn't have when I wrote this down. Okay, this space was blank. I saw that I needed the value of not Q in order to evaluate this conjunction, so I created a column for not Q. And the values in the not Q column are just the opposites of the values in the Q column. Q goes true, false as we go down the column, so not Q goes false, true, false, true. Now, I can evaluate this and by looking at these two columns. And my rule is, it's an and. It's false unless both of these things are true. So I look at these two columns. In the first row, well, they're not both true, so it's false. In this row, well, yeah, they are both true, so it's true. In this row, false. This row, false. So there's my truth table for P and not Q. Now, there's another way, and your book shows you, and some people prefer it. You want to be really careful. You want to do it, be able to do it both ways, because this way it's real easy to lose track of what you're doing unless you've had a significant amount of practice. So I don't usually like to talk too much about this way, but the way we do it is we do P and not Q. Okay? Under the not Q, we just do the column of the truth values for not Q, just reversing the values of Q. And here we write again the column for P. Okay? So we got false, true for the not Q, true, true, false, false, same as P. And now we can look at these two and evaluate the and, which is going to give us, again, the same thing we got over here. Okay? We got to have both true We don't have it here, so it's false. We do have it here, so it's true. Not sure why I wrote a true there, but I did, didn't I? Okay, two falses. Clearly, if both things are false, the and is false. And they're not both true here, so we've got a false. So now our values mimic the values that we have here. They're exactly the same. And we've ultimately evaluated the and. Now again, don't use this unless you can keep it straight. Use this, it's easier to keep it straight even though it's a little bit longer. What about, now I'm going to evaluate this way. P or not Q, if P or not Q, then P and Q. This is an if this, then this. If this, then this. Well, again, we start by writing this out over here. Now, what is this ultimately? It's an if-then. It's an if this, then this. What do we need in order to evaluate this? We need the value of P or not Q, and we need the value of P and Q. Well, then to the left of this, I'm going to write P and Q because we're going to need this, and P or not Q because we're going to need this. Once I have the values for these, I can just look at them with the rule for if-then and write down the values of this. Okay, well, I have everything I need to evaluate P and Q because I've got columns for P and for Q. I don't quite have everything I need for P or not Q because I don't have values for not Q. And I'm assuming I started out from the right and I'm moving to the left. So at this stage I haven't written out this column, but now I see that I'm going to need it because I've got a not Q here. So I write down the values for not Q corresponding to the values I started out with for Q. And now I can evaluate this by looking at the P column and the not Q column. So let's color code this just a little bit. I want to evaluate this. I need to use this column and this column. So the rule is or the connective is or, the logical operator. And remember, or works, you have a true unless they're both false. So let's see, P's true here, that makes it true. And P's true here, so that makes this true. P's false, not Q's false. So actually we have two falses here. But here we have a false and a true. So the two falses give us a false, but everything else has at least one true, so we get true. Okay, now we want to evaluate P and Q. So we want to evaluate this. Well, we can just look at these two columns. Okay, so we just look at these two columns. We evaluate P and Q by the usual rule, and we say we get true, false, false, false. The only time they're both true is the first row. Now we can evaluate this. So we want to evaluate this. We have to look at the value of P or not Q, which is here, and the value of P and Q, which is here. And it's an if-then, so this is going to be true as long as we don't have a true here and a false here. So we're going to look at this, then this, and if we don't have true, false, we know it's going to be true. Well, okay, first row we have true, true, that's good. Second row we've got a true, false. Okay, so we're going to get a false here. Third row we got false, false. Well, yeah, that's okay. We can conclude a false from a false. We can conclude anything from a false. That's true. True, false here, false again. And right there are our values of this expression.